Okay, so welcome everyone to our very first Canvas K-12 / P-12, depending on what state you're in, user group for 2024. It's lovely to see everyone back from holidays. I'm sure, well, hopefully we're past the busiest part of the busy start of the year. And yeah, it'll be great to be able to hear from everyone and some of the things that you've been getting up to. But we've also got some special guests to share a couple of things with us today. Firstly, just if everyone can see Nikki on video there. So Nikki is a fellow customer success manager who also works with K-12 schools like myself. So if you don't know her, then hopefully you'll get to know her a little bit more down the track as well. And I also have the wonderful Ruth, who I'm sure many of you are already familiar with because Ruth is just a legend like that. So Ruth is looks after product for our region. And so she advocates for us with the product team to help us to make Canvas great for our particular region of the world. And she's really good at it. So we're really lucky to have her as our colleague and to have her representing us to the broader product team. And this is the agenda for today. And we're going to put Ruth in spotlight first, because I'm sure that's actually probably why most of you are here. But Ruth is going to share some cool stuff in relation to product, in particular around some cool stuff that's coming very shortly, which you can actually read about already on the community site. We've got some blog posts up there about a couple of things that Ruth will be talking about. But following that, the other main topic for today's meeting is sub-account structures. And what sort of sub-account structure do you have in your school? And it'd be great for people to share why you've set up your sub-accounts that way, and anything that you've learned along the way. And have you changed sub-account structures? And what was the reason for that? It would be really interesting to hear. We've found that it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of thing with sub-account structures, but we do notice a lot of commonality amongst sub-account structures, particularly within the same sector. But I don't want to take up too much time before allowing Ruth to get underway. So I'll hand over to you, Ruth. Are you going to share screen? I imagine you are, yes.
I'm going to share screen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday afternoon. It definitely does not feel like a Friday to me. It feels like it's already been a long week, but here we are. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this Arvo and for having me in on the session. It's always great to be able to come and hear from the group and connect with as many of our K-12 customers as possible. So thanks so much for everyone's time. As Paul mentioned, I'm going to be sharing a few updates from the product perspective, things that we're working on that I hope are going to be are you able to stop sharing, Paul? And I'll share my screen. Things that I hope are going to resonate with as many of you as possible. I've sort of tried to curate a few of these things that I think are particularly applicable to K-12. Can everybody see that? Yep, brilliant. All right, Andy, you're who I can see on my screen with all the rest of the things going on. So yep, great. Awesome. So I'm going to dive in. I actually do have to jump at the top of the hour from my side, so I won't ramble on too much, but it is an exciting group of updates. So before I do that, as per everything, just a quick FYI, we are going to be looking at things that are future facing today. So thinking about things that are coming in the future, aka they're potentially still in discovery or design or being validated. And so as we continue to listen to our institutions that we work with and that we serve, there are things that might need to evolve, whether that's the design, how something looks or functions, or the timeline that it's being released in, that type of stuff. So please do keep that in mind as we move through some of these updates. I wanted to start off with a very quick one. We won't spend too much time here, but this is a bit of a sneaky one that's coming in the March release. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't missed, because we enforced our new gradebook filtering experience at the end of last year, which essentially allows you to create more personalized and robust filters when you're looking at the gradebook and refining the different types of data that you might want to be populated in there at any given time. And one of the most common bits of feedback that we've gotten since that happened was, I love the filters. These are great. These save me heaps of time. But I would love to be able to have multiple selections within the one filter group. So I want to be able to pick 2 modules or 3 sections or whatever it is. And so you weren't able to do that before, but you will be able to do that as of the March release. That's in beta already. So please jump in and test it if you're one of those users who've been hoping that we would support that. And it will be available in production come the March release. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to jump off mute or pop them into the chat, and we'll make sure that we get back to those things as well. The next one that I wanted to talk about, and this is very, very close to my heart, is differentiated content release. And the reason that I'm so passionate about this is I've been with Instructure for 5.5 years now. And for the first 3 of those years, I was a customer success manager like Paul and Nikki, working directly with our institutions, adopting and implementing our products and thinking about how we could use it for a multitude of different use cases. And something that came up to me often was the inability of Canvas to be able to support different electives within the one course, students that had different learning requirements, teachers who were trying to give different people different content within the one course shell, and there was no easy way for them to be able to do that. And so very excited to have been part of this project and to see this come to life. This has been in sort of early testing for the last couple of months, and we are now about to release this. This is going to be coming out. We're targeting the April release for differentiated content release. And ultimately what this is going to do is it's going to allow a teacher or whoever is managing a course to be able to assign module content, so a whole module of content, or just pages if that's what they'd like to do. So you'll be able to do this at the individual content page level as well as for the whole module to specific individuals or sections within a course. So thinking about, the situations where people might have different learning needs, or they may be managing different streams or electives or whatever that may be within the one course, being able to go ahead and manage that so that learners are only seeing what they should be seeing, what's most relevant to them at any given time, and really at the start of us leaning into that more personalized learning approach. And I say the start of because the product team who are working and developing on this part of Canvas, this really is scratching the surface for them around personalized learning and where we'll be moving around supporting differentiated learning models. So really excited for this, and I'm hoping that's something that many of you are as well. To support the release of this, the way that it's going to actually function in a course, as you might see in that screenshot, and I do appreciate it, it's quite small, but there is a brand new modal, a slide out modal that will come from the side that will support assign to. So the same type of capability that you should already be familiar with for assignments and different types of communication methods like announcements and discussions. You'll be able to use that same workflow of assigning to a particular student or different sections within a course. And that's actually going to replace that assign to workflow everywhere that assign to is used in Canvas. So the same outcome and the same idea, but it's actually going to be a replaced modal across the whole interface to make it much more intuitive and streamlined across every part of Canvas, and that functionality is then adopted everywhere that someone might be trying to assign a particular artifact or a whole module of content within the course. Are there any questions on this one? I know this has been something that has been a sort of top ask from K-12 for a long time. So curious if there are any feedback points or if there's any questions on this one in particular before we move on.
Just Ruth, it's Doug here from OLMC. With the ability to just allow a subset of the group to use it, does that sit at the top of the module level, or is it at a page level, or how does it work?
So what will happen is the learner will just see what they should see. So if you're looking at the module index page, and the screenshot is sort of showing that, then the learner would come in. If they were to click modules, they would just see the modules that are assigned to them. And vice versa, if they were just to look at their assignments list or their quizzes list or their discussions list, they would just see the pieces that are assigned to them based on that. So it is adaptive based on what has been assigned. And if, for example, within one module, you're assigning that module to a particular section or a particular students, but actually there's an assignment in there that you want everybody to be completing, then you can still have that assignment assigned to everyone and the module itself only assigned to particular people. And in that scenario, the people that have been assigned the module will see that whole module and all the contents within it. And the people that have just been assigned the assignment won't see the module. They will just see that assignment on their assignments list, and they'll see it in their to-do list as well. So it creates much more flexibility in how you're able to leverage that and diversify that content.
Just a follow-up question, Ruth. The metadata that's displayed under items, and you can see it there in your screenshot that the date is there. Will there be metadata to say the sections that have been identified? So if we've got peer teachers in a collective Year 7 English course, that they can see which items perhaps have been assigned to 7A and 7B, but perhaps teachers of C and D might also want to assign it to their classes as well?
So they will be able to see that from this assigned to modal. Whether or not it would be in that sort of metadata at the object level, I'll come back and clarify that for you, David, but it is something where they will definitely be able to see it from that assign space. And anything that does have sort of custom assignments, so the default is that everything is assigned to everybody, but if something has been assigned custom, then there is a sort of a notification icon to indicate that that has happened, to prompt people to look at the what has been assigned to who. But whether or not it will appear where that sort of due date is and that sort of stuff, I'm happy to clarify that and come back to you.
Follow-up question. So as this obviously has great value in terms of differentiation, popular request we have from schools is the fact that when they're identifying, so the diversity group of students is a very popular section used across our courses to make sure that they're identified and teachers don't have to look up who's on the list, et cetera, et cetera. So when they do assign tasks to either the entire course or to the diverse learning group, they often get confused to say, well, did that go to the diverse learning students or did it go to everyone else? I know that when you assign something to 7A and you wanted to assign to a different group, one of the options does say everybody else. Does any of the development of this particular workflow assist with that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that some of that will depend a little bit on practices and how you're doing what you're doing in terms of those sections and assignments and things. But I do think that this will be helpful just from the perspective that the default is that it will be assigned to everyone. So if there is no sort of custom assignment, it's assigned to everyone, and anything that has been assigned custom will be very clearly indicated that way. So I would hope the answer is yes, but a little bit will be based on your practices and your teachers and how that happens.
Yeah, I guess the clunky way of seeing schools approach it is the fact that they've got sections for diverse learning, non-diverse learning, the entire course, 7A, 7B, 7C, because often when they are assigning everything to everyone, they don't want to include the diverse learning group because they want something unique for them. We would hope with universal design for learning accessibility that we'd be designing things that are accessible to all.
Yep.
However, I know that question will come through. So the short answer is probably not included in this particular feature.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying. You're wondering, will there be everybody but this group essentially? No, yes, that's not part of the initial scope. That doesn't mean that based on feedback that we get that's not something we would consider in a future iteration, but as part of our sort of version 1 release, no, that's not something that we would intend to support.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. All right. I'm going to move on to our block editor initiative, which I'm very, very excited about. We know that not everyone, particularly in a K-12 environment, who are actually building these courses and building content are HTML experts or have any experience when it comes to content design. And they're really just looking for the quickest, most effective way to make engaging content that meets their curriculum requirements and means that they're not staring at a Canvas page for hours and hours trying to get that right. And so what we are working on at the moment is an initiative that we're calling Block Editor. That may well change, but it's simply looking to introduce a familiar interface that works really seamlessly with existing tools like our page accessibility checker and things like that, using blocks to format content in a way that creates flexible layouts for all screen sizes, and is leveraging really common design practices that you're expecting from lots of different types of tools and software that people engage with every day, so that there is a huge reduction in the effort, the cognitive overload, and the sort of what's required from individuals to go in and create content within Canvas. So new capabilities for different types of content that you can build with these, and also making sure that it's responsive from the beginning, so we can move away from some of that table-based design that we know some people are still leaning into. But really looking forward to this. This is something that's actually in moving into closed testing group, and there are participants from our APAC K-12 contingent involved in there, which is really exciting. So your voice will be heard. As well as all the different bits of feedback that we've heard from CSM discussions, my discussions with people directly, things we hear from the community and from the user group more broadly, to make sure that we are addressing as many of those challenges as possible as part of this effort. But this is something where, as I said, it'll move through a closed testing, and then it will be an open beta available for everyone to jump in and have a look at. But ultimately, we're looking to release this capability as general availability for anyone to use in the second half of this year. So looking forward to that. Yes, Paul may be the most excited person about this of everyone. Alrighty, for those of you who are leveraging Studio, a quick plug for you if you haven't already seen that. But we know that screen capturing is a really important use case for any video tool, and for creating content based on what's being portrayed on a screen at any given time, and presentations and things like that. So we have historically leveraged a third-party tool, Screencast-O-Matic, as part of the Studio screen capture experience. But we know that that's created some challenges for users across the board. And so we have actually just introduced earlier in February a beta version, but it is available to everybody right now in production if you want to go ahead and start using it and giving us feedback on this, a alternative to that Screencast-O-Matic screen capture. So this is a browser-based tool that I'm going to talk about another capability that we're introducing using this as well, but this is now essentially an alternative to that existing workflow, which we know I've had many conversations with many of you about your challenges with that. So looking forward to feedback from you, and hoping that this is going to be something that really elevates that experience for you in Studio. All right. So off the back of that, now that we have this more native-based screen capture tool, something I'm, again, very, very excited about, and came up a lot when I was a CSM working with many K-12 customers myself, and continues to come up since then, is the power of screen capture for feedback. We know that SpeedGrader offers great capability for audio comments and videos, and text and all sorts of different things, annotations. But something that has been lacking is the ability to simply create a screen capture of the submission, and to be able to narrate and articulate the feedback that you have for that student and for that submission. And so in the March release, you would have seen this in the release notes if you've already had a look at those. This is something we're actually introducing for every Canvas customer. So you do not have to be a Studio user to be able to leverage this. But this is something where you'll be able to save directly as a media comment on the submission, a screen capture based feedback for the student. So very, very much excited for that. And hopefully that's going to really, again, diversify the approaches that people have for giving feedback, and just the different types of opportunities that are available for the end user, how they like to go about that. Any questions for this one? It will also have auto captioning for those submissions. So accessibility has been a huge component of the design and what we've been thinking about in how we're addressing this as well. So there will be captions based on that screen capture as well.
Ruth, Tara's just asking when that's released. It was March, is that right?
Yep, March release. Will students have access to this when submitting? It's a great question. So students are able to, if you have Studio, they're able to create screen capture assignment submissions using Studio, so that's possible. But because SpeedGrader is obviously a functionality for teachers from a marking perspective, this is really targeted at the marking side of that workflow. All the more reason for every teacher to have a stylist. Totally agree. Agree, Michelle. Better stylist functionality side SpeedGrader. I continue to advocate for that, Michelle. I will make sure that is continued to be shared back to the team. Does the recorded videos get stored in the course or attached to the user files? It's for the submission, so it's happy to come back to you on that actually. Whether it's not the user files, I don't believe. I think it's as part of the course, but it's for the submission specifically. So happy to come back and clarify that. That's a great question. All right. Again, for those people who have Studio, I very quickly wanted to touch on an administrative capability that we are introducing. Again, targeting the month of March for this to be available for all Studio users. And that is really just introducing some administrative functionality for the management of Studio Media. So that's something that we've heard consistently from our institutions has been lacking when they're looking at their account, how Studio content is being used across their account, having visibility into media storage, exploring which content is being used where from a Studio perspective, and making sure that the right people have ownership to those different pieces of media. So when staff leave the institution or there's role turnover or change in ownership for any reason, that can be managed really seamlessly, which is sometimes challenging today. So we are introducing a dedicated usage and management space within Studio, where there'll be dashboards for this type of data to be able to search for media and have a much better understanding and insights into how it's being used. And that just awareness and visibility of what's going on for Studio across your account. And in a future release, we're also going to be introducing a sub-account awareness for Studio, which hasn't existed until this development, where we will ultimately be extending this capability. It will at first release be for root account admins, but once we introduce that sub-account support for Studio, then heads of faculty or department or however you structure your account in Canvas, those admins will then be able to be given privileges to do this as well at the sub-account level, if that's what you'd like them to be able to do. So really looking forward to making the management of Studio much more robust, and hopefully that's exciting for those of you who leverage that product. All right. I very quickly wanted to touch on new quizzes. No product update would be complete without a new quizzes update. So I thought it would be helpful just on the left-hand side to give you a bit of a recap of really what has been introduced or supported with new quizzes just in the sort of second half of last year. So lots and lots of effort and innovation going into new quizzes, you can see on the left side. And on the right, these are the things that we're thinking about now, and some of the more pressing things that are top of mind for us to be addressing as soon as possible for new quizzes. So a couple of those things I wanted to call out. Sub-account support is exciting, as well as some of the additional API work, which continues to come up from a number of institutions. But what I will also mention here is the common support. So we do have introduced towards the end of last year, being able to export a single quiz in a QTI file format, which was the first exportable, or the first way of moving a new quiz outside of a course. But we're looking to really double down on those efforts, particularly in the first half of this year. So thinking about how you can share and manage new quiz resources through Commons, if that's something that you leverage at your institution, as well as through import-export packages and course exports and things like that. So regardless of how you manage content, that you'll be able to do that with new quizzes supported as well. Will Admin Analytics soon include new quizzes? This is interesting to me because new quizzes is included in some aspects of Admin Analytics, but not everywhere. So I'm curious as to where the gaps are for you specifically, David, but it is certainly something that is top of mind for us to have parity for each of those elements, that classic quizzes is available for new quizzes as well.
So when our teachers are looking at the analytics of their course and most recent participation.
So course analytics, not admin analytics?
Course, yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So in admin analytics, it is supported, so that's why I was confused, sorry from the question. But for the course level analytics, new analytics, whatever you'd like to sort of refer to that as, yes, that's not something that is currently supported, but it is something that the product team are looking at in 2024. It's not yet prioritized, but it is something that I will certainly give an update on if and when that happens this year. All right, I'm going to dive into our last topic for the day, because I think this is the one that most people are probably most excited about, and that is the rubric redesign. I'm certainly incredibly excited about this. We're paying very, very, very close attention to the whole rubric experience, and that really spans the creation experience, the marking experience in SpeedGrader, as well as introduction of learner reflection capabilities as well. And so I just wanted to walk through a couple of these different elements and how we're sort of approaching this. But ultimately, this is a complete revamp of the rubric experience. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty significant development. So we are splitting it into 2 phases to try to provide as much iterative value to you as possible. Instead of waiting for it all to be done, you guys can start using the benefits of what will be available first as soon as those things are completed. And so when we think about phase 1, we are thinking about a couple of different capabilities. First of all, when we think about how we build rubrics, the ability to be able to have default settings between scored and unscored criterion and rubrics, as well as the directionality of the grading scales, which I know does bother some people, how it displays in the rubrics today. So the ability to have that personalization of how that looks for you. As well as the mapping of scales or levels to a particular criteria. So bringing in outcomes and standards and things like that as part of your rubric build out, similar to how you do that today. That will continue to be maintained in the new design as well. Being able to copy and duplicate criteria, drag and drop, reorder criteria, all those sorts of things that are not possible today. But there'll also be the ability to preview before a rubric is published, so to see how it's going to look and understand how it's all coming together, and introducing some more flexibility in how you're actually displaying the rubric. So we will be maintaining the traditional the rubric as is today, that more tabular view, but those tables will line up really nicely for those cells. If you know, you know on that one. But we'll also be introducing 2 other views. And you can see in the bottom screenshot there, that is our horizontal view. You can see it's a much more streamlined version of the rubric with the marking scale moving across the page. But it really does respect as much real estate on the page for the submission itself, which a lot of people don't like about the traditional rubric. That takes up a lot of that space in SpeedGrader. So you can go ahead and change to this view and have that be much less of the dominant space on the page. And we'll have a similar one that will be our vertical option, which will, instead of having the buttons for scoring moving across the page, you'll be able to go down the page. So for things that might have an 8 or 10 different rating scale, it wouldn't be very intuitive to have that go in a horizontal direction. So you would use a vertical one in that use case, for example. Those support or are being built to support the smaller screen sizes that Canvas is built for. And so really looking forward to, you know, again, just the diversity of what that's going to bring in terms of personalization and how people like to mark and being able to fit more of those use cases as possible. We will also have in there an enhanced anonymity option. So I'm not sure how many people are leveraging the anonymous grading option in Canvas today. At the moment, the scope of that is for the actual mark to be anonymous, but any feedback that is left either at the rubric criterion level or on the submission holistically still shows the user's name. So that is something that will be completely anonymized as part of this development. And the final part of phase 1 is introduction of student self-assessment. So really, really looking forward to this, where students are able to go in and leverage that same rubric to be able to essentially review and mark honestly how they think they've gone on that task. And the teacher can then see the student's version of that rubric as well as what they're going to do and have a bit more of a comparison. And ultimately, we see that really bolstering the autonomy and the ownership of that experience and of that submission on the student's behalf. So that's phase 1. The second phase is looking at a couple of other capabilities. We have heard that people would love to have some of these things involved as part of their rubric experience. So things that we're thinking about here are the incorporation of an RCE Lite into the SpeedGrader comments. So being able to use links and basic text formatting and things like that when you're leaving feedback or creating comments, as well as the ability to download all rubrics. So initially thinking about that in a PDF format, but we'll also be considering things like CSV and XML formats as well. And something I'm particularly excited about is rubric importing. So we know that lots of people currently have rubrics exist in Word documents or in CSVs and that type of thing. So initially we will be supporting CSV and XML for that again, really streamlining that creation process. You don't have to recreate things in Canvas. You'll be able to go ahead and import it from that file format. The last 2 that I'm really excited about are rubrics and being able to have multiple of them per assessment. So at the moment, you have 1 rubric and you have 1 submission, but we know whether it's for internal grading, there might be self-evaluation, there might be there's lots of different use cases we hear for why someone might want to have 2 different versions of a rubric for the same assessment. And so that is something that we will be introducing as part of phase 2. And finally, and this is probably the most common bit of feedback that I hear, sorry, that's my son, everybody. I'm just on a call, buddy. Is the release of feedback separately to the mark. So at the moment, when you release grades in Canvas, the piece of feedback, the comments, as well as the mark for that task are both released at the same time. So this capability will actually allow you to do something like make comments available before you make the grade available. And we know how important that is in terms of thinking about the feedback, retaining that feedback, paying attention to it, and not just looking, great, I passed, I'm done. So that value of feedback at the end of the day. So lots and lots that are being encapsulated as part of this project. But hopefully there's at least a few things in there that excite everybody, and looking forward to having, again, some more participation from folks from our part of the world as we continue to shape the delivery of this. But please do check in with the community, because that's where we're posting lots of updates about how this initiative is progressing.
Ruth, I know you've got to go. There are a couple of questions.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in and having a look. I mean, lots of positive things. That's great. I'm looking for the questions, to be honest. E to A option, copy a number of cells. What do you mean, David? E to A option? As in A to E or E to A? Yes, you'll be able to change the directionality of that. So that will be completely customizable.
Yep. Thank you.
Kimberly Law, importing rubrics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff with rubrics and Word and Google documents.
Yep. So the initial scope, as I mentioned, will be CSV and XML, but we are hearing this already a lot. And so that's feedback that I can continue adding to the product team to let them know that doc-based format would actually be really valuable as well.
Yeah, I was on a call with Canvas this morning, and it's the first thing I asked is I've got a lot of staff asking me how to import their rubrics.
Mm-hmm. Yep, completely.
And she actually sent me to there's somebody has created a CSV file on one of the Canvas chats. So yeah, I'm just trying to find an easier way for staff to be able to get all their old content into Canvas.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Andy's asking rubric availability on the parent app.
Yeah, exciting updates there. I'm gonna leave you hanging and leave that one for our next call, but definitely there'll be some exciting updates on the parent app when we touch base next time, certainly around the visibility of feedback and comments in particular, which we know is sorely missing at the moment. So let me leave that as a carrot for next time, Andy, but it's front and center for us. Are you able to average averages? Grant, could you tell me more about that? Do you mean average averages within? Well, yeah, can you tell me what you mean by that? I don't even want to guess.
Feel free to come off mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So just in some of our rubrics, we have like 3 criteria that we average, and then we have another, say, 4 criteria that we average. Then we average the 2 averages, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be available in? Because currently we can't at the moment, so we sort of have to double handle the marking.
Yeah, so you double handle it by going to, you export it and then you do it outside of Canvas. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so we put it in a spreadsheet, then we average those averages, and we're sort of double handling what we're doing there.
Yeah. So a couple of different bits of thinking here. There'll be some more capability around at the moment. You can create criterion based on a outcome itself. You'll also be able to create a custom outcome, or a custom criteria rather, that you tag or align to an outcome. So I think that will be quite powerful as well. But in terms of the actual reporting on that and what that looks like in terms of the marks, it is a little bit hard to comment without seeing your workflow and seeing your rubric. So I'd love to dig in a bit deeper with you on your use case, and happy to connect with you and your CSM around that. But some work that we are doing in the Learning Mastery Gradebook is actually the ability to see not just the results for each outcome, but also how that total result has been achieved. So we do have an average outcome calculation method, and you would then be able to see if this outcome was used in 3 different tasks, then the average of those things equals this, and that would be shown in the Learning Mastery Gradebook, as well as those contributing scores, much more clearly than you can in the legacy version of that Learning Mastery Gradebook. So yeah, I don't want to promise anything without knowing your full use case, but there are certainly some things we're doing in that space to help with that exact pain point.
So I was about to say a dad joke, something related to average, but you know, Ruth's response is way better.
And unfortunately, I do have to jump. I'm really sorry about that. But I do appreciate everybody's feedback. I would love to go back through the chat poll and make sure that I'm addressing all the different questions if anyone has anything that's outstanding or I haven't had time to cover. But just wonderful to see so many of you, and thank you so much for the time and for having me.
Thanks so much, Ruth. We always love having you.
No worries. Thanks, everyone.
The Ruth draw card to the meeting. Anyway.
Bye.
Bye, Ruth. All right, so moving on to the next topic of discussion, and this is an open discussion. How good is Ruth? And now she's gone, like seriously. And one thing I will say is she is genuinely interested in the feedback that we get, and very much, yeah. She doesn't palm things off. She considers very carefully to make sure she totally understands the use case and what people are actually trying to achieve, because you know that's the important thing that we're trying to solve. All right. So yeah, part 2 of today's session is what's your hierarchy? And we have some general advice about that we usually give to clients when they first start using Canvas. But there is no one best way of structuring your sub-accounts in Canvas, because the advice we give normally is generally it should reflect your administrative structure at your school. And 90% of the time that holds true, and it works fairly well for most people. But we'd love to hear how well, first of all, if you can just briefly introduce who you are, what school you're from, and then, yeah, whether it's K-12, just purely 7 to 12, high school, primary or junior school, or all of the above, just so we have a bit of context for the structure that you're doing at your particular school. And just, yeah, how do you currently structure your sub-accounts? And do you have any special sub-accounts that you've created that you think might be interesting for others who are on the user group? So if you'd like to just use the raise your hand, is probably going to be the easiest way to do this. Raise your hand, and then I'll just, Andy's first came off the rank.
Well, I
too
just
quick.
thought may as well get the ball rolling. So my name's Andy Mifsud. I'm here, part of the digital learning team at Barker College in Sydney. And I think there's a couple of us. Paul Harmon is here on our team, and Gabby Corduroy is also joining us from Team Barker. So team, feel free to jump in and correct me. But essentially we're K-12, we're a K-12 school. So I guess our first big decision was splitting our sub-accounts into our junior school and to our secondary school. So that one made perfect sense for us as far as administration. So Paul, for example, is the digital learning leader for the junior school. So he's particularly overseeing and working with the junior school sub-account, whereas Gabby and myself and another colleague are mostly in the secondary school sub-account. For the secondary school, we have also then broken off each a sub-account into the different departments. So from agriculture to commercial studies, drama, English, maths, each have their own sub-account. And then we've also broken that down one level further to have stages. So we have for subjects that are 7 to 12 in the secondary school, we would break that down into in New South Wales, stage 4, stage 5, and stage 6. So we've got lots of layers of sub-accounts. We're lucky in the fact that we have a great guy in our IT department that is able to create that sub-account structure for us and sync it to the timetable. So we've got a custom sync that happens where he takes all that timetable information and automatically creates new classes for us in the in the correct sub-account structure. So a lot of this is sort of set and forget, and we've had this same structure in place for, well, I think since we've had Canvas. We maybe had a couple of tweaks, but you know, definitely over 5 years of working, even more than that, with this model. The real advantage, the why behind why we do it that way is as Paul mentioned, is so that we can tie it into our admin structure. We have our head of departments in the secondary school. So head of English is given an account role that we've created called the head of department. And then we also have assistant coordinators as well that might have some elevated privileges. And then we also give an account role as well to all faculty members within that department. So really this gives us the ability for anyone in a department, say, let's use English, all English teachers can see all English courses and have the ability to jump in and say, mark some work if we're doing some cross marking or really kind of administer a course to varying degrees of level. So the reason for breaking down further into stages is we also have stage coordinators. So for English, for example, we have someone that coordinates stage 4. They need to have sort of heightened levels of privileges for all of those areas. We haven't quite got the automation happening with the people in the same way that we have with the courses. So that's a little bit of a sore point for us in that we need to do some manual oversight to make sure that people are given the right account privileges and are set at the right account roles. I'm sure there is a way of automating that and putting it into our processes. But I think it's just one of those nice to haves that we haven't quite got around to working out yet. But that is, I haven't spoken much about junior school, Paul, if you want to jump in and say anything else. But essentially, the junior school courses are broken up into stages as well. So we have stage 1, 2, and 3 for junior school, and then some broken down a little bit further after that. But that's our quick little overview. I'll shut up now.
You covered it for me.
Okay, great.
Andy, can I ask a quick question of you? It's Wendy here from Redlands.
Hey, Wendy.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, good.
Thank you for all of that. Is it really just for privileges that you've done this, or is there more to it? Did I miss something? Sorry, I went out to turn the air conditioning off.
I think it is mostly for privileges in that we can particularly look in the juniors, in the secondary school where there's that clear delineation. There's quite a lot of power in permissions and setting up the privileges, and departments might also tweak things. You also, oh yes, yeah, useful for themes too. We didn't go down that path, Michelle, but yeah, that's another reason to do that. If you don't mind different faculties having different Canvas themes, you can do that too. Yeah, like the sort of granularity of permissions that you can set up means that a head of department, if they want to lock things down pretty tightly in their department and not allow, teachers to go in and edit pages or things like that, and you have a very strict kind of code to follow, where you might have identified staff members that are, like an instructional designer type of role. You can do that once you have that granularity of the sub-account structure. So for us, it just found that was, that was the main reason.
Yep. As far as admins are concerned, just so you feel a bit better, I don't think anyone really automates that, although
Okay.
it is possible. You can actually upload admins in bulk via CSV import or via the API. If
I think Michelle does that.
We do.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. For new staff as well.
So Michelle, are you taking that from sort of like an Active Directory, kind of like it knows their roles and it puts them in automatically, or is it like a bulk upload CSV that you do?
We're doing it based on the integration of Canvas. So when they get added to the school, they get added to Synergetic, they get a timetable. When they're added as a teacher, it knows they're a teacher, and they get added with teacher privileges, teacher admin privileges to the correct sub-accounts, depending on which school they're in within Haileybury.
Nice.
Not at a departmental level, because departments are crazy and changeable on a 5-second
Okay.
5-second basis, but definitely on a Haileybury Rendell School versus Melbourne versus Pangaea level.
Well, that's cool. Catherine also does it. All right. So up until today, I wasn't aware of anyone who did it in an automated way, but it is possible. So I know, yeah, David's had his hand up for a little bit. Do you have a question, or you're ready to share next?
Just happy to share.
Okay. Does anyone else, before we jump to David, does anyone else have any more questions about the way that Andy has set things up? One comment I will make before I hand over to you, Dave. Sub-account structures can be really handy from a reporting perspective. You know, you can run reports at the sub-account level, both the reports inside Canvas itself, but if you're using Canvas data, for example, you can also use that structure to help use it as a filter, so to speak, for reporting purposes. So it can be really handy for that as well. Now, going back to your question earlier, Wendy, as to other reasons you might want to do that. All right, Dave.
Thanks for the topic area, because we're actually in the middle of once again remodeling our our architecture as we grow. So our context is a little bit different. So we're rapidly approaching 20,000 active users, which is really exciting. So we've got to evolve with the number of directors. So we're not just talking about one school, we're talking about 83. So in terms of the brief that I gave my new leadership team, so for those people who are interested in the standards for sub-accounts, so number one is settings. If you want to determine anything about settings in terms of your themes, LTI installs, permissions, that's number one. Number two, leadership functions. Who are your leaders? What functions do they need? Because that will inform the sub-accounts that you provide. And then Paul just touched on it there in terms of admin functions. So if your administrators are looking at reports, analytics, diagnostic tools, you need those sub-accounts there for you to be able to do that readily, either through other mechanisms or mechanisms off the shelf within Canvas. We also use terms quite heavily to give us a bit of metadata around our sub-accounts. So I wouldn't talk about sub-accounts without also talking about terms. Paul mentioned about a unique sub-account that you may or may not have created. Our little special source for our 22 vet courses, which we deliver across all of our schools via Blueprint. We needed to make sure those blueprints were at the very top level of our tree for those courses to reach the associate courses that we desired. So we had to completely remodel our tree to get blueprints to the top. And no, you can't move these things manually. That's a CSV import process. And it took us a few times, a few attempts to do that.
Can I just comment on that, David? Yeah, that's exactly right. The good thing is you can change your structure, your sub-account structure. The easiest way to do that is to create the new structure and then move the old courses before you retire the old structure to the new one. You can't actually delete a sub-account until it has 0 courses in it, for obvious reasons. So yeah, that's kind of the high level process. But anyway, we can talk about that. If we need to talk about that with anyone specifically, we can get into that on a chat sometime.
Yeah. And Michelle just made mention of course, templates. So if there's any City Labs customers using Design Plus, obviously having those sub accounts where you can have extended customization courses, that all serves in with that. And before I pass it on to someone else, Paul and anyone else in the Canvas ecosystem listening, can we please have metadata that allows us to identify student groups? So everything that Andy's talked about and everything that I've talked about has talked about the teacher, the faculty, the administration. But if I want to have a look at year 7, by year 7 maths courses in the maths sub account, it's in the science sub account, etc., etc. So to be able to give real life to those other analytical reports, and especially in the area of well-being, which is just so huge for us, can we please have metadata that allows us to identify our different year groups, please? Anyway, off my soapbox now.
Well, you mean without having to put them in a specific year 7 sub account?
Well, year 7 sub account, the year 7 coordinator isn't in charge of the year 7 courses, the maths, English, science, etc. They're in charge of the courses. These other people are in charge of the kids. So, so much of that architecture is about teachers. We just need a little bit of information to be able to do stuff about our students.
Cool. Well, this is being recorded, so even though Ruth's not here, she will be able to watch the recording. Michelle.
So it's not meeting with me on Zoom. And why is it saying I'm muted? Okay,
You're unmuted. We can hear you.
I'm not. I'm glad we caught that on video because that's something I do quite frequently. Eek. So we're very similar in terms of we have sub accounts for each school within Haileybury. So Melbourne, Pangaea, and we've just brought Darwin on board. So they're a separate sub account as well, which means that we can keep things both the same because we're all in the same instance, but also tweak to make things suit the different areas of the school. But one of the things I'm working on at the moment is probably like you, David, you know, those moments where you're like, oh, this would be good. And then you have to look at your account structure and go, damn it, I need to look at that again. I've had to look at our permissions again on the root level as we got bigger and as we now have corporate staff training offered through Canvas so that our staff are now students as well as staff members. So I've had to make sure that on that root account level that there's quite a few, well, I mean, you already want it to be small, but moving that level of different levels of privileges down a level to make sure that you don't accidentally have teachers be teachers inside those risk and compliance and teacher appraisal process courses. So that's added a little layer of complexity that's been really joyful. And then of course we've got sub schools, middle school, junior school, and then within that departments. It's a nice tree.
Nice. And one other piece of advice we normally give people, and it's not always possible, but you know, is trying to keep the structure as flat as possible because that simplifies your life. But sometimes it's not always possible, and there are specific reasons and yeah, why you might not have it as flat as you might like it to be. I have a feeling David's going to talk about that for David Somerville, the other David. You've got your hand up there. Why don't we pass over to you?
Yeah, I'm flying solo today. So I think one of the things we need to be absolutely aware of here is that the Department of Education in New South Wales does not officially support Canvas. They do not have any help structures with it whatsoever. The other thing we need to realise is that they do not also have any TSOs formally assigned to schools. There is no head teacher technologies in schools. They're all funded by the principals if they wish to. So, you know, what we need to be understanding with that is that we need to make it as simple as possible. So, for example, I had a meeting I think I mentioned it the other day, but with Orange, they have no technology people in that school that I'm aware of. So when you start talking about sub-account structures and things like that, there's absolutely nobody on site to support them. So having the central sync coming straight in there, they don't want to muck around with, you know, sys files and import files and things like that. So it's I just think we need to be aware of that you know, introducing Canvas into a lot of these schools that don't have the IT support that some of our more well-off colleagues have is something to be aware of. So, for example, in the college, we have a main account, we have a sub-account for each campus, and we have a sub-account for PD, but everything's fed automatically from central, and we don't have to muck around with anything. And when we're starting off the year with all of our systems, you know, it's something that we don't have to really think about, except we have to turn off the auto so we don't get last year's stuff coming in. But other than that, it's pretty good. So yeah, just as I said, just something to be mindful of.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, definitely appreciate that. And it's something that you know, it is something that if you can't do it for reasons like Orange, for example, it doesn't break the functionality of Canvas.
Oh no, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But you know, I think we need to be careful when we're advising these new schools coming on about doing stuff that's a little bit complicated for them, because it just puts them. But like they were very confused. So,
Yep.
you know.
Yep. Definitely appreciate that. I'm glad you spoke up about that.
So.
Doug.
Doug from Our Lady of Mercy College in Heidelberg in Melbourne. Look, with the sub accounts, we go on our learning areas, so we've got English, maths, science, etc. They then have sub accounts, and that's so we'd have Year 7 English, Year 8 English sitting underneath the English. For administrative type of rights, the head of the learning area for English would have the ability to go in and edit any of the courses within that sub account. Teachers, generally we keep to the subjects that they're teaching, so they don't have edit rights into any other courses, even if it's in their same learning area. But we did introduce, and we weren't sure if it was the best way to do it, but we wanted all teachers to be able to view all courses. So at the admin level, we created an admin role called View All Courses, and the only rights that that admin has is to view courses, and that allowed our teachers then to go and view any course, whether current or past, that's been run here, and grab any content that they thought was appropriate, or check if they're doing something in another subject that they find interesting, or a student's mentioned, they can clearly go and view that. So we've really opened it up for staff to go and view, but they don't have any edit rights, so they can't change or delete. We don't give them rights into the mark book either, into those courses. But yeah, that's how we roll.
Nice. Thanks, Doug. Just realized we're pretty much out of time now. Dave Shield just put a really good point in the chat there. I'll mention it, is if you're creating sub accounts, make sure that you add a SysID, not just sub accounts, anything you create in Canvas, if possible, add a SysID to those objects, because it will make your life significantly easier to change things in bulk down the track. If something doesn't have a SysID, then you can't modify it via a bulk CSV import or anything like that. So it's just a good general practice to get in the habit too, if you happen to be creating anything manually in the user interface. Of course, if you're creating something by a sys import, then it has to have a SysID to go in anyway. So that's a moot point if you're doing it that way. All right, unless there's any other questions, I think we'll wind up for today. We're almost at 4:30 now. Really appreciate everyone for sharing on the user groups, because all the learning comes from sharing with each other. You know, sometimes we drop a couple of nuggets in as well as instructor employees, but seriously, all the good stuff comes from each other. And I think it's great to remember that there's not just one way to do it. There's different ways depending on your context and your organization, and that's okay. But it's understanding why you might want to do it a certain way versus another way is the most important thing. So that's hopefully you're able to glean some of that from the user group today. Thanks again, and we'll see you all at the next one. Bye.